Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name is James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show 20-year law enforcement veteran and the man behind Reston Group Critical Solutions, Jared Reston. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from his journey into the world of law enforcement, the importance of fitness in the first responder professions, the impact of officer-involved shootings, mental health, the Charlie Kirk murder, weapon design, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of well over 1,100 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Jared Reston. Enjoy. Well, Jared, I want to start by saying this is a long time coming. I just mentioned that before we hit record. Your name has come up many times as far as guest recommendations, and I don't know why these paths never intersected, but we are finally here. So I want to welcome you onto the Behind the Shield podcast today.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
I'm in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida.
Beautiful. Not too far from me. I'm in Ocala, so down the road.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would love to start at the very beginning of your timeline. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
All right. So I was born in Houston, Texas, only lived there for a very short time. Moved around a bunch when I was a kid. My dad is a chemical engineer and worked for Dow. So we moved a bunch then. Then my parents split up when I was in the 5th grade. So then I ended up in Orange Park, Florida, which is a suburb of Jacksonville. And that's kind of where I grew up and maintained, stayed my roots here in Jacksonville.
Beautiful. Chemical engineer. Talk to me about that as far as having to move the family around. What was it that was pulling your dad to all these different places?
That's just how the job was. He worked kind of in the oil business and had to go different places. And we moved around probably 18 to 24 months, when we were kids. My older brothers got more moving than I did. I was probably more stable than anything, but that's just how it was.
Well, you hear that from the military families a lot. And I always ask, anyone who was raised in that kind of environment, when you reflect, even though, as you said, it was a shorter period, what were the pros of moving? And then what were the cons, if any?
The pros of moving was, I was from a bunch of places. I remember a bunch of places. I remember a bunch of people and just different cultures. And it wasn't just like moving down the road. I lived in Jacksonville twice, Houston, Mobile, Alabama, Houma, Louisiana, and Westerville, Ohio. So, it was, it was good.
And what about cons, if any?
I would say for my brothers, they don't have the long history of friendships that I have with the kids that I grew up with. Once I stayed in Orange Park. So they don't have that kind of, almost brothers bond with other kids because they were moving so much. That's
kind of the double-edged sword, I think. When you do stay in a place, I moved a lot when I was younger, and not when I was young, but when I kind of got into adulthood. And you obviously get to travel a lot. So as you said, you get to see all these different cultures. You get to see the same kinds of people all over the country, and you realize that there are those characters everywhere. But when you do lay down your roots, there's also that sense of community. So you need, I think, to travel so that you kind of shed some of the stereotypes and maybe the the myopic views on life that some people have that never travel. But at the same time, if you're traveling constantly, you never really get to feel what it's like to have that cohesive community too.
Right.
So what about sports and exercise? What were you playing back then?
For me, I played football. It's Florida, so you play football or nothing. So that's just kind of how it was. I played football into college, and um, that was my sport. When I was younger, it was skateboarding. So I went from like skateboarding to playing football.
What made you stop skating?
I got a little too big for it. Like I kept breaking my decks every week doing stuff because I was just a little too heavy, I guess.
Now, what about first responders, military? Did you have any in your family or extended family?
Uh, Not when I was younger. My oldest brother got into law enforcement when he was 20. So I was 11. So, I mean, he kind of paved the way for law enforcement for us.
And is that what you were thinking about when you first graduated, or was there something else prior to that?
I mean, I think I was probably going to be in law enforcement no matter. Like, I used to ride ever since I was 16. I would do ride alongs with them and do things. And it was just fun. I think, like, kind of my calling into law enforcement is I didn't want to grow up, and just having that bond with your friends, that locker room feel of, just doing things and having a brotherhood and doing that kind of drew me to that same kind of law enforcement career path.
Now, what did that path look like for you? I knew some agencies will hire you as a civilian and then put you through other ones like I had to do. You get your fire and then you go test for a job.
Right. So that's how it was. You had to go to the academy back then. You had to pay for your own academy. It was ran through a college or state college. Once you got to the academy, then you had to take your state test. And once you passed your state test, then you could get hired by an agency. Like, it made you eligible to be hired. So I did all that, applied to a few places. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was always somewhere that I wanted to be because it was the premier agency of North Florida. And so I got hired on as a bailiff, and I hung out there for about a year until they, moved me to the streets.
And what year was it you got hired?
2001.
Okay.
April 2001.
As we sit here now and there's a huge recruitment crisis in police, fire, and EMS, I always like to contrast that with how competitive it was when we were testing, because I got hired in 2004, so not too far after you. How competitive was it back then to be a police officer in Florida?
Oh, it was super competitive. I mean, it was, and I hate to say it, but like even like being a white male made it a little bit harder, at those times. But I mean, you just kind of, it was competitive, and you better had your stuff right. And sometimes, like, I probably wasn't the best at when I was younger. So, I got in a little bit of trouble. So, like, I had to wait a little bit longer in the courthouse. I had to do my time. They had to, is he responsible enough to do this? And it's just the nature of the beast.
I think it's an important conversation because as we sit here now, and I think one of the things that's turning the fire service around, ironically, Orange Park, I think, are really trying to make this happen there too, is looking at the firefighter work week, for example, and they've been working our firefighters into the ground, 56 hours a week, mandatory overtime. Yeah. Now you're talking 80 hours a week. And then, surprise face, people don't want to do this job when they look at it on paper. And then, they say, oh, we can't even hire enough people now. I'm like, this is how far you've fallen. That we used to have hundreds, if not thousands of people testing for a handful of positions. So we used to be there until 10, 15 years ago, and we can get back there. But you've got to finally, have the backbone to say, look, as a profession, we've made some mistakes along the way, and we've got to fix them to entice young people to want to do this job again.
Oh, for sure. And it's just the culture of service has not been really looked at really as an honor or heroes. Now you're getting bashed all the time, and like, who wants to put up with it when no one's got your back, kind of deal.
Yeah. Well, even from the community point of view, circling around to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, when I think as an immigrant about America, it's the American dream. You know, it's community, it's having a place of your own, it's raising your kids. And yet, when you look at the message now, it's like, no, you know, fuck everyone else. You need to have all the money. You know, it's a very
Yeah.
different message than I got as a young boy in England, for example. So I think, you know, even environmentally, we've allowed that messaging to shift to a very, very selfish, nasty narrative rather than it takes a village. And that includes taking care of our first responders and military members, as well as our teachers and everyone else.
Yes. There's not a lot of service. There's a lot of me involved now.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned as well about not being an angel. I've told this story a few times on here. When I first did a test I went to school in Orlando, but then I went down south and did one of those kind of collaborative tests where you take one test and then they give it to a bunch of agencies. And there was a history, you know, like a criminal history, you know, whatever it would be called. Oh my goodness, why am I blanking on the name? Pre-app. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, let me be honest. A long time ago, I tried a couple of things in a different country, had a great time, you know, was never late to work.
Yeah.
And guy from Miami Beach screwed it up and threw it in my face. And I was like, oh, so honesty isn't what's needed. You have to lie to become a firefighter. And, you know, never really thought about it, you know, ended up getting through polygraphs and getting hired. But now in this position, reflecting, just talking about, you know, what you were mentioning a minute ago, there's a big facade that the perfect cop, the perfect firefighter is someone that's never done anything bad in their life. And I couldn't disagree more. Now, there are certain things that you can't do, you know, I mean, obviously involving children and other things that, yeah, of course, completely disqualified. But there's a lot of things I think that our kind of people find themselves doing that then once, as you said, they've kind of moved away from that and learned from it, that end up being an asset in uniform rather than something that should strike you off a list.
Oh, for 150%. I mean, we're kind of a good officer fire. They're risk takers. They're willing to do it. They're willing to push. And, you know, a lot of people talk about several things or when something gets hard, but sometimes it just takes a fuck it, let's go attitude. And that's going to be that risk taker who does it. You know what I mean? The same thing that may have got you in trouble in high school. Like, all right, let's do it. Like, not a lot of thought will make you a hero in other parts.
Absolutely. It's ironic because I've said this a few times. The same things that I tried that I was disqualified in that process for are now being used to heal first responders and military from PTSD. So there we go.
Yeah. And they've opened that way up. I mean, they've lowered the standards so much to try to get people, you know, it's just wild.
It is. Well, while we're on that subject, I mean, we'll obviously walk through, but if you were king for a day with this kind of storied career that you've had, what do we need to change on the law enforcement side so we can get back to the type of demand for policing that we saw 20 years ago?
I think it needs to get back to that more harder, almost like a paramilitaristic, at least academy and things like that, so people know what it's like to be hard. I mean, I feel like the academy has taken more of a business approach rather than, you know, so they have like HR and you're not allowed to drop people to do push-ups anymore. It's like their PT is scheduled and it can't be done outside of that. And I mean, that's wild to me. Like, I don't know, like for us, it's like you walk by somebody and you looked at them sideways or like, you know, you just kind of looked crazy and they're like, drop. You're like, dang it. You know what I mean? And but that prepares you for things. That it's not just, you know, everybody wants to make this a business. It's not a business.
No, I've always said this. People say that in the fire service too. I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to mirror a business, why are you mirroring an Indonesian sweatshop rather than? Because look at Google. You know what I mean?
You really don't want an HR as a business in a firehouse or a police station because they're probably one of the worst Like a true HR person would lose their mind if they were there.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, speaking of that, then, what was the culture when you walked through the front door of your agency as far as mental health, physical fitness, and weapons training?
Um, Jacksonville has always been really, really great. I mean, I think they still are today. But like our culture, we had a guy, Tom Votor, was our lead combatives instructor, and he was just a man amongst men, and he just and he was great. Um, our firearms have always been there. Jacksonville's always been kind of a violent city, and we've had some pretty famous shootings and big things happen with us, and we've been a gunfighting culture for a long time. So I still think Jacksonville has one of the I travel around and do a lot of things, and we have a good culture at our sheriff's office.
As you were early in your career, were you training outside of that as well? Were you doing other classes? Was that even a thing back then?
Oh yeah, for sure. That was I think I got that kind of from my sports background. If you want to if you from middle school to high school, you wanted to be you wanted to become a starter as soon as possible. So like when I kind of took that mentality, I wanted to be a starter immediately becoming when I became a policeman. So fresh out of the academy, I would take any classes the academy was putting out. I trained a lot of MMA stuff at that time, and and just doing different stuff to be better. So when I finally made it, they called my number, I'd be ready to play.
Now, were you trying to get on the SWAT early in your career, or did that come later?
I got on. It took me 3 years to get on. And I my timing was perfect. We were having the Super Bowl, so we ramped our SWAT team up in numbers to for the Super Bowl, and I was part of that Super Bowl crew that was able to come on. So I probably got on a little bit earlier than some people did, but my timing was just right.
Now, what about fitness standards? Because this is always interesting. Regular cop versus SWAT operator. Was there a big disparity between the two, or was it actually
It
close
was
in
a huge
Jacksonville?
disparity. That especially when I got on the team, it was you know it was pretty much based on most of it was based on your physical standards. Like it wasn't we didn't have a lot of shooting standards, we didn't have CQB standards, we didn't have a lot of standards except for PT. So and your PT standard, it was big. It's 12 dead hang pull-ups, mile run in under I think a mile run under 630, 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, legless rope climb, and then the obstacle course, which doesn't sound like all that crazy, but when you put it all together in one morning, it was it was a kick in the nuts, and we had to maintain that standard. And I'm 6'3". When I went to the academy, I was 6'3", 270, playing defensive line in college, and I was I wanted to become a SWAT guy, so I got down to 210, and I almost didn't make the police academy because I couldn't run a mile and a half in under 15 minutes. I got 14:58 and I crossed. It was I ran 40-yard sprints. I didn't do miles. That was crazy to me. And then I just put a lot of work in it and decided that's what I wanted to do. So yeah, and I'm competing against 5'8", 165-pound dudes, like little ninjas just bouncing around. And there was only I think I did 17 years on SWAT, and there's probably only 6 of us over 200 pounds. You know what I mean?
It's funny.
So
It's the same with the SEALs and Delta. We
yeah,
all think that they're these, these bodybuilders because that's what you and I grew up with, on TV. And you listen to, the high performers of the world, and you have your big guys, the breachers and that particular type, and you have some really, really small people in some of these high operator positions. And then, as you mentioned, it seems like the average person is kind of like 180-ish. So they're not these,
yeah,
giant behemoth, men and women in these positions usually.
right.
So what about the regular cop then? What was the difference in their fitness standards?
I mean, I still say there isn't a fitness standard, but we do have a fitness standard, and it's an obstacle course they run. It's, get out of a vehicle, 40-yard dash, body drag, like up 6 stairs, down 6 stairs. You got to pick up a 50-pound dumbbell, put it on a table, jump over a 4-foot ditch, and then you got to like serpentine through something. So I mean, it's not even a quarter mile, I don't think. And you get like an eternity to do it. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of but people fail it, and it surprises me. But
well, what I think is strange, I mean, obviously, as you said, I mean, you guys are required to wear, more protective clothing usually, or protective equipment. You're carrying maybe larger weapons, and you're breaching things that the average street cop is probably not going to do, certainly not very frequently. In my profession, we have special operations, but that's hazmat, that's rope rescue. It's not like they have to be above and beyond from a physical fitness standard, usually. So, it doesn't matter who it is. Any of us could be the ones called to a high-rise fire. Any of us could be called to, drag people from a mass shooting. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it. So in my profession, there's one standard, and sadly, it's extremely low in a lot of places, or absent. You go through the academy, and maybe when you get hired, you're held to a standard, and that's it. In law enforcement, though, even though people maybe don't need to be at the highest level when it comes to SWAT, there does seem to be this massive, gap between the SWAT performance standards and everyone else. And arguably, any of those cops could go to a shooting, could have to run up to a high-rise fire, whatever it is. So what is your take on the average, fitness standards in law enforcement outside of SWAT?
I mean, I think they're very low. I mean, I'm a firm believer, and I don't care if it's your first day or your last day, you can never be a liability. Always be an asset to your department, be an asset, and understanding, you might have to do these things. I mean, physical fitness is a huge part of our job. I mean, fighting people. Are you able to fight somebody? You're not going to be able to do it nationwide. I mean, our unions, like, I love our unions for some things, and I hate our unions for some things. Like what they stick up for and what they like, our standards are our standards, and they're so low, like for physical fitness, because people fight that. Because there have been fat bodies like their entire life with no discipline, and like they want to complain about it. What's it got to do with my job? Like everything, it has to do with your job. It has to do with everything.
Yeah, we end up getting a bunch of Uncle Ricos that, you wait, when adrenaline hits, I'm going to rise to the occasion. It's like, no, listen to the.
No, you're not. You're going to have a freaking heart attack, and you become, now I got to pull your ass out. Like, you know what I mean? It gets wild, like what people feel they can do and what they can't do. And I mean, physical fitness has always been a part of my life. It's never not going to be a part of my life. I talk about a lot after like being shot. After I was shot, like what physical fitness did for me, like it got me to the fight. I think it helped me in the fist fight. I believe it probably helped me take some of the rounds, but it also helped me return fire because my heart rate wasn't spiked to all get out. You know what I mean? And then physical fitness has everything to do with our job.
Well,
and how people say it doesn't. Then you're not doing the job right.
Yeah. Well, I'm always very mindful to underline the fact that the environment that a lot of us work in does set you up for failure when it comes to body composition, testosterone, etc. Like shift work is not kind to the human body. That being said, though, right, if you are opposing fitness standards, and again, right now, if you're talking about the firefighters where I'm sitting at the moment that are working 80-hour weeks, it's kind of hard to drop it on them right now because they're so mismanaged and so overworked that they just want to go home. They're exhausted, and I get that. But what's nice with this new work week, the 42-hour work week, is you can then bring alongside a punitive fitness standard. Say, all right, now we finally fixed what's broken. Let's put something else there that we should have always had. Because if you're resisting fitness standards, firstly, you're saying that I'm okay with the chance of my firefighter, one of their, engine crew or the person that they're going to save dying because I'm too scared to enforce a standard. And I'm also actively opposing longevity of their career and retirement because I don't want to put in a fitness standard. So there is no downside. And this whole, oh, you're trying to take our jobs bullshit. In your academy, in my academy, we knew exactly what was required of us as far as our fitness. So no one was suddenly surprising you with, oh, you need to be fit to be a firefighter. So that's such a cowardly stance in the first place.
That's crazy to me. You know what I mean? And y'all are firefighters anyway. So y'all, how many hours a day do y'all get to work out in that little? Stop playing video games and cooking for each other and go work out. But no, I mean, standards. It's got to be part of your life. And even if you want to go home, cool, have some discipline. Like, I worked a lot of hours, but I got to have discipline to go to the gym. I got to go. I got to work out. Even if it's a little something, that's part of mindset, and that's part of being hard. Do the things that you don't want to do all the time, because when it gets hard, you're going to be able to suffer through it pretty much. You know what I mean? Like, you've put yourself through pain. You understand what it's like.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's why I did CrossFit for a long time. And, the last time I'd been kind of air quotes red line would be a few days ago. Not the academy, 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, 100%.
All right. Well, you mentioned the shooting. Before we get to that, as you progressed through the first few years, what was some of the career calls that you had?
Man, like when I was in the academy and everything, I wanted to make SWAT and I wanted to be a K9. Those were my two. That's all I wanted to do.
So as far as actual calls, did you have any kind of near misses, large incidents prior to 2008?
Yeah, like, so I've been in a shooting prior to 2008. I was in a shooting when I was on patrol in 06. I was on the SWAT team, but I wasn't. It was a patrol shooting and things like that. So yeah, I was in a bunch of dangerous stuff. Like, that's what we did. Even when I was on patrol, even before I made SWAT, I had 3 other buddies that we worked the same shit. We worked midnight shifts and we worked the same area. And man, we used to get after it. Like, our job was to put criminals in jail. You know what I mean? And we tried to do our job the best as we could.
So what was the background of the shooting prior then?
We had a guy from Orlando killed his wife in front of his daughter. He thought that she was cheating on him with another guy. That guy lived up here. Like, even at roll call, we were briefed, hey, this is supposedly happening. He might come up here. Few hours later, like about 6 hours later into the night, they put out a house fire at the address where that guy lived, where the suspected boyfriend lived. We got there. There was a guy with a gun out in front watching it burn, which it was the murder suspect. Set this guy's house on fire, was out there. Had a brief standoff with him for a little bit. He took off running through the neighborhood back towards the fire where the firemen were actively working. Me and 2 other guys were giving him pursuit, kind of cutting him off. As I went between 2 houses, he hid behind like an outside air conditioner, and he started letting it loose on me as I was going in between the houses. So I had to go prone. He was shooting over me. My partner Scooter started letting it eat over top of me. And he's telling me he's behind the air conditioner. And so Scooter was just putting rounds into that air conditioner, trying to keep him from coming out. And so then I was able to kind of backtrack out, get around the house, get the angle. I can see him around the other side of the air conditioner. So I started putting rounds into him on that side. So it was a good one. It was like a movie. You're in a neighborhood fire. They got a big fire going. It was wild.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. You definitely spared some firefighter lives, probably too, because a number of calls that we've, as a nation, have been on, where a gangbanger's come back to finish the job and they've killed paramedics or doctors or nurses. So yeah, that could have been horrendous. So one thing that's always intriguing to me, because again, there's clearly a mental health issue when it comes to someone that discovers their loved one is cheating, if that was the case. And that's happened to me, and I didn't go and kill everyone in my neighborhood in response to that.
Yeah.
In all this desperation and all this violence that you've witnessed through your career, have you noticed any common denominators of how these people are getting to this point?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just different levels of different people. I've been involved in a bunch of different shootings, and it's just all different walks of life and how they get involved in it. And I just understand that there's evil in this world, and there's good people here to fight it. And that's kind of how you got to think about it. Like, I don't care why they do it. I know it exists. You know what I mean? And I'll just, if God puts me in front of it, I'll handle it.
Absolutely. I think this is the thing. I mean, at that moment, you have to have an acute response, 100%. But I think systemically, there's definitely room for conversation of how are some of these people getting to the point where, for example, our streets are so dangerous that law enforcement, are wearing tactical gear all the time, which they're criticized for. But you never hear that point of the part of the conversation. What are we doing culturally that's creating so much criminality in the first place?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what I think kicked off like the large militaristic of law enforcement is the militaristic of criminals. And that was the onset of crack cocaine. Crack cocaine changed the narcotics game. It used to be, you'd go buy weed or quaaludes at the bar, or you know what I mean? There was not a trap house. There was not fortified entries. They were not protecting it. It was that. So when you start militarizing and you start making strongholds, well, we got to still defeat that. So we got to up our games. I mean, that's all that's happening. When drugs get violent, then you got to answer violence with violence. That's the only thing that you can control it with. I mean, you can do the programs to stop the need for it, but the only thing that stops violence once violence goes is violence.
Absolutely. Well, this is always an interesting question to ask anyone in law enforcement, because you are the men and women that were told to enforce laws, period. When I look at the time I spent in uniform, there was so many kind of ripple effects of the failure of drug prohibition in general. The empowerment of drugs in the underworld, and the immigration issues and some of the cartels, the homelessness, the sex work, goes on and on and on. And there are places in other parts of the world now where they had the same kind of issue, tried our model, the American model, decided it didn't work, and then ended up taking the addicts. I'm not talking about the smugglers, I'm not talking about the dealers, but the addicts, and they put them in the hands of the medical community rather than arresting them. But with that, and this is an important point, also gave a lot of funding to mental health counseling, addiction counseling, job creation, housing. And it wasn't even forcing them into doing it. It was educating them that they had this opportunity. Portugal's a great example of this. And they revolutionized addiction in their country. And then the law enforcement and the court system was freed up to really start hitting the dealers and the smugglers. That being said, that's my opinion. That's what I think is something that we could consider in the future. Without loading the question, though, what is your perception on the success of war on drugs, and would you change anything and do it differently?
Well, we're losing it. You know what I mean? And the thing is with drugs, make them illegal or not illegal. You know what I mean? You can't bounce around with it. I'm all for getting people treatment and all that, but what about the crimes they committed? People are saying, well, I'm a drug addict. Well, cool. You robbed somebody.
Mm-hmm. That's
you know what I mean?
crime.
I don't care about your drugs at that point. And I mean, you talked about mental health. The mental health system in the United States is broken. We think that calling somebody a crazy person offends them, and you can't offend. You know what I mean? It's off the rock. No, they're crazy. I mean, we've gotten rid of loony bins. We don't have them anymore. You know what I mean? Unless you are criminally insane. But there are people you have to look at where is our homeless people? Our homeless people probably have drug or mental health issues. It's not a job issue. It's not a lack of job or a lack of money. You can give them all the money they want, and they'll hide it in a tin can or something and sleep in a tent. And you know what I mean? because they're not fit to live by themselves. And people, I don't think that sometimes our family structure breaks down and we don't take care of people like we should take care of. That mentally ill person's our father. Yeah, it's hard on us, but they give up on them and they put them somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's we don't have the family structure nor that to deal with. And calling someone crazy or because they are crazy is legitimate. Like, I don't care about your feelings. You know what I mean? So
Well, that's what I understand. The reason why homelessness got so bad in the States was exactly like you talked about. They shut all the psychiatric facilities, and a lot of those people ended up homeless. You have obviously people that are being released from prisons that, again, probably a lot of them still had access to drugs at that point, and then they're not given an address. So then you've got this compounding element is what I'm trying to say. It's not a victim mentality at all. And again, certainly with the crimes associated with addiction, that's a separate conversation. 100%. Those still have to be penalized. But taking that kind of altruistic model, and again, you're not going to get all of them. This is another important point. But that large portion in the middle that you can just steer back into mental health, to find their feet again and get them in, a job and get them some housing. This is what they found in a lot of these other nations. But what you and I have seen on the streets, the way that we're doing it now is not working, and it's making it more and more dangerous for our first responders.
150% it's getting more dangerous. I mean, it's getting, the courts are more lenient. So you get away with this. You're going to go to this, go to this, go to this. And then you just get sick and tired of it. And, and the attacks on law enforcement and just the lack of respect for law enforcement, like slapping a policeman. When I started, you would go to prison. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you were outside of a bar and you were just some drunk whatever, and you're like, oh, and you hit a policeman, you battered a law enforcement, you were going to prison for a short period, or you were going to do some freaking time. Now they look at us like, well, it's kind of your job to get hit. No, it's not our job to get hit. Once you allow these things to go on forever, then it becomes culturally acceptable. Like, I don't really like having law enforcement in our schools, like our SROs how they currently are, because I feel like you inoculate kids to the presence of law enforcement. Like, when I was a kid, I never saw a policeman. You know what I mean? Unless I was in trouble or like you knew how to act. They're not your friend. They are there. They are the authority. They are the rule. It's almost like, teachers are your mom and police officers are your dad. When they, like if you were getting in trouble, like, yeah, I'll talk to my mom a certain way. But when my dad walked in the room, you're like, all right, never mind. Yes, sir. And you know what I mean? Like, it changes you. So there has to be that level there. And I also feel like they make police officers in schools become rule enforcement officers and not law enforcement officers. You know what I mean? Like, and that shouldn't be how it is. I'm not there to deal with those kids. I'm there to protect those kids from an active shooter or anybody coming in there. And I'm also there to put kids in jail for doing criminal acts on school campus. That is it. I'm not there to lecture them or talk to them about things. That's not a law enforcement officer's job. And they keep giving us these more jobs of, you have to be the counselor and this and that with everybody. But that's not really the job.
Well, I had a really bad experience with an SRO and a principal, my son's middle school, and uncovered the fact that they were Baker acting kids left, right, and fucking center. Anytime the kid had any sort of kind of emotional response, they were shipping them off for a 72-hour hold. And I didn't realize that this was a national conversation. I think actually, I want to say Tampa especially was one of the biggest voices. And then, what ended up happening is they changed the rules. So now if that happened, there was a consequence, because when I went to the sheriff's office and the school system, the school blamed the sheriff and the sheriff blamed the school. It was fucking nauseating.
Yep.
And because you add to the fact that you then get seemingly, in some cases, some of the worst police officers sent to our schools. who not only have no backbone, God forbid you do get a shooter, but are also making horrendous decisions like this. So I think the right kind of person can be an asset in the school, but the wrong kind of person can destroy a school.
100%. Well, they're not going to put the right kind of person in a school. They're going to put the wrong kind of, because I mean, I've gotten into it with SROs too, because they feel like they work for the principal of that school. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, you work for the sheriff. You work, like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't work for the school board. You are a law enforcement, and they don't get it. Like, it's a lot of times, like when we'd work off duty, like sometimes when I'd work off duty, like at a hospital, you know, they're like, hey, they call me into the ER. I need you to tell this person to be quiet. I'm like, all right, well, are we going to kick him out of here if he's not? And they're like, well, no, we can't do. Then I was like, then I'm not telling him to be quiet. You know what I mean? And they're like, why can't you? I'm like, I'm a law enforcement officer. So if I go there and tell him to be quiet and he looks at me and says, fuck you, what's my next step? You know, without having a law that's being broke, I got to tuck my tail. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for talking to me. You know what I mean? That's not how it's, and people get mad because they're, well, we pay you. I was like, no, that's not what you pay me for. You know what I mean? I am not there to intimidate somebody. I'm not there to show. If I better have a reason to talk to you, a legal reason to talk to you before I go up there and do it. And like, that's the same thing with these schools. You know what I mean? It's SROs feel they work for the school, that principal and their rules, not what, you know, even their agency's general orders say.
Well, while we're on the topic, yesterday, obviously, you know, there was a couple of horrendous shootings. Charlie Kirk was assassinated, for lack of a better word. And then we had a shooting at Evergreen High School in Colorado as well. So while we're on this topic, what do you think is the best model for this kind of violence crisis that we have at the moment in our schools, as far as whether it's, you know, SROs, armed teachers, or any other suggestions that you got?
I mean, for that, I'm all for arming teachers if they want to and they want to go through the training and do things, because at least that's somebody that wants to be there and wants to put forth the protection, you know, that they're doing. I'm all for arming teachers. I don't think it's a. I mean, the best thing to do would rotate guys, like really put. And you're not going to do it because the meat eaters don't want to go sit in the school. You know what I mean? It would almost have to be a duty aside from your normal job, and it'd be a short term. Like, I'm going to sign you there for 2 weeks, and you are not doing any SRO. Like, you're not, but that principal won't let that happen. Like, I don't need you to walking the halls. Like, I need you patrolling outside and able to respond inside quickly and deadly. And that your only job there is to do those type things. But it gets very, very monotonous because, I mean, the chances of it happening are very rare. But that's why you just got to kind of put dudes in maybe like on a couple week rotations. But that should not be their job, because they too will get complacent.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I would think, look at when I was a firefighter, I didn't want to be in the quiet places. I wanted to be in the hood,
right,
my whole career until the last places didn't really have a hood. But that's a good idea, because I mean, if you are rotating through, then a lot of the, you know, the people that would be at the tip of the spear are also then going to be familiar with the layout of the school and exits and windows. So I could see how a rotation actually would be an asset for the first team that's responding to.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at these active shooters and all that, man. It's the same kids we stuffed in a closet or in the lockers. You know, don't be scared of them. They're not John Rambo. They're not some terrorist supercell. It's not the attack of Beslan. Just get after it, go get them, and put them in Davy Jones's locker. You know what I mean? Like, that's all you got to do is just be ready to attack and get after them.
I mean, you've trained all over the country. You have your own training group. When you look at some of these failures of that, Parkland, Uvalde, etc., what are you seeing culturally that's creating that kind of, circumstance in the first place?
Cowardism. If you allow cowardism, you will get cowardism when it happens. Uvalde was cowards. You saw them go up. They made it to that door. They were doing good things. And then they were challenged by gunfire and they ran away. And then they started making excuses why they ran away and why they did it and tried to make it into a tactical decision why they ran out of there. They were pure cowards. Parkland was a coward. People showed up and went to do work. And instead of bringing out how great people were that did the work, they concentrate kind of on the lower of who didn't do the work. But there are several people there that didn't do the work. You know what I mean? Like when you watch Uvalde, because they kept putting out, well, he's barricaded. Like those BORTAC guys, they didn't know that there was people shot inside that room, right? Yeah, he's barricaded, but they're on a timeline right now where the people are bleeding out and dying in that room, and we need to get in there. And you watch like a BORTAC team leader, like they're in a little talk, and you kind of see him walk away, and he walks back, and you can almost like I can see it on his face. He's like, "What? There's people in there," and then he literally was like, "Fellas, get up, let's go." And those dudes went in there and handled business because those guys were ready to do work, understood the mission, and were ready to die for that mission. And like that's the people that you have to go do it, and they handled that situation appropriately.
So culturally, and I see, this is what worries me about the bar being lowered, fitness standards being lowered, is when you have a crucible and you have a high demand in a first responder profession where you're taking the top 5-10% of an entire list, the chances of getting the right kind of person increase dramatically. When you lower standards, when you have no fitness standards, I feel like you're opening barn doors then for the wrong kind of person as well. What do we do to turn this around where the chances of having someone without the backbone for the profession being at our child's school is diminished significantly?
Man, it just goes to the culture of law enforcement. I don't think you can. We're not too far gone, but it's just like with any job, man, 10% do 90% of the work. You know what I mean? And they don't want to get stuck and I mean, everybody gets a trophy, man. All that stuff comes back to where we're at today. That they try to diminish men and people being meat eaters and getting after it, and not just men being men, but women even in like being a warrior, you know, doing these things. A woman warrior is like very held high. A man as a warrior, they're like, oh, you're just a piece of trash. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird dynamic on what they're trying to do. Like, you know, you go girl or whatever, like, but a dude doing the same thing and with that same mindset and that same, I mean, I guess probably because we are more dangerous than they are or what, but it's one of those things that it's just a huge society thing. And it's not in law enforcement. It's in the world. It's in just how it is. It's not just law enforcement. We are a reflection of what the world is today. You know what I mean? And if the world, and I feel like we lost it in law enforcement a lot because, and probably in firefighters too, you know, September 11th, 2001 changed a lot of things. If I wasn't already on the job, I would probably have been in the military. Because you just get that calling, and we've got a lot of men and women who got that calling to go to the military to fight for our country. Hopefully we start getting those guys back, but we changed during that time. And now who wants to be part of that shit? You know what I mean? Who wants to get bashed on camera, get a cell phone shoved in your face, not backed by law enforcement, not backed by your command staff? You know what I mean? And I feel terrible, man. But I've just always worked for good sheriffs. The sheriff of Jacksonville right now, he backs his guys. When they do wrong, he puts them down. But when he does right, he lets people know, you know, violence doesn't look good. Like that's what I think is a bad part of body cameras is when you shoot somebody and you write a report and it reflects exactly when someone reads something, they don't have that emotional reaction to it because nobody wants to watch another person die. You know what I mean? Like it's it creates a physical reaction. And if I'm in a job to fix that, well, if I get that reaction, that must feel like it's wrong. It's not wrong. It's just, it is what it is. So it's easier to kind of read things and say, like, okay, that worked. But seeing it is bad for them.
That's one thing I've heard from some of the canine guys I've had on the show. Mike Goosby's a good example. He's an LA PD guru, like canine guru. My brain's not working today properly. And he's talking about the optics of the canine program. And yet, of course, when someone's, got their arm in a German Shepherd or Malinois's mouth, it doesn't look great. But firstly, when you hear the percentage of bites in a canine, officer's career, it's not very many at all. And then you look at the alternative. Well, if they couldn't use a dog, then they're probably going to have to use lethal force. So it's safer for the officer. It's safer for the person that they're trying to pursue as well. But again, that's a middle of the road, common sense conversation, and it doesn't fit the extremes of either side.
Right. And you're right. But writing a canine report's different than watching a dog do it. You know what I mean? And because, people are like, well, they couldn't get that dog off. Well, it's a dog. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it's the best trained dog in the world, but it's still a dog. You might have to get them to release. You might have to do, and the people don't like to see those things happen, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's got to happen. And it's just, that's the nature that we're at now. And now people just don't want to put hands on people or do anything because of different crazy politicians trying to use law enforcement as one of their own pawns.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of, significant events, let's go to January 26th, 2008. It sounds to me like the beginning of this was quite a benign event compared to some of the high level, events that you've responded to prior. So how did that day begin for you? And then walk us through it.
So, man, I was working off duty, like at a mall, but I've worked every Saturday for years, and started with a shoplifter. We got out there. Me and my partner got out there. One of the shoplifters was fighting loss prevention. One of them ran off. By the time we got there, they were dusting off the guy who fought, and they're like, hey, the black guy also stole something. We want him apprehended. I look across the parking lot, me and my partner, and we see a guy about 75 yards across the parking lot at a bus stop, but he's kind of separated himself. And he sees us see him. That big aha moment, he takes off running. We give chase. We chased him across Arlington Expressway, which is like a 6-lane highway, about 7:40 at night. So that was a little bit of Frogger to get across there and into a shopping center. And he ran to the shopping center as we cut through the parking lot. So we were able to we were heading him off at the pass. I saw his legs get like he got the wobble legs. I was like, ooh, yeah, he's done. I was like, I'm going to pick it up and go get him. So I picked up and ran. And when I got to the corner, I told him, hey, stop running. You're now dealing with the police. This isn't like, let's go back and handle this. And he turns around and looks at me and puts his hands up, but he doesn't say a word. He just keeps backpedaling. I tell him, stop or I'm going to tase him. He starts running again. I attempt to tase him. Nothing happens. My taser malfunctions. So I have to safe that, go hands on with him. We probably, as soon as I put my hands on him, like I grabbed his hood. He had a zipped up hooded sweatshirt. When I grabbed that hood, I was going to dump him to the ground. Well, as soon as I put my hood, he spun high and broke my grip. And then he came to rest with his hands like tucked like this. And I was like, all right, well, we're fighting now. So we got into a brief physical fight. And then seconds into that, he produced a Glock 21 with a 45 caliber Glock and shot me through my chin, exited out my neck, hit my body armor here, which that shot made me start rolling down like this embankment. It was like it was on top of a retention pond without any so no water in it. It was about 25 yards circumference, about 5 feet deep. So I'm rolling down that thinking, all right, I thought he punched me because I never saw the gun. I was like, all right, because it felt just like a heavy impact. I'm kind of dazed, and like I'm telling myself, hey, get up, get up, get up. But nothing's really working at speed that I needed to, except for my brain. And as I'm rolling, I feel with my tongue, and my jaw is now collapsed on top of itself, and my teeth are laying flattened in my mouth. So I was like, all right, something else is going on. And then I look up, and he's standing over top of me shooting me. So like that's when I realized I was in a gunfight. So as I'm like shaking off the cobwebs and he's going, he starts like walking away. And every time I move, he would shoot at me. And he'd shoot at me. But when I was laying on my back and I drew my pistol strong hand only, trying to get to my feet, I'm pushing off the ground. And I just start engaging him from my back. And as I'm engaging him, he starts coming back on me, trying to put me back down. So he's coming in. I knew I was getting good hits, and I finally make it to my knees as he closes in on me. So I lunge up and I grab him and I pull him down to me. As we're falling to the ground, as soon as we hit the ground, I put my muzzle to his head and I give him 3 contact shots to his head, ending that fight. So that ended it. My partner came and did it. I ended up taking a total of 7 rounds. So that 1 through my face, I took 3 across my body armor in the front. My left leg, I took 1 above the knee, exited out my hip, or exited up on my thigh into my right buttock, took 1 into there. It hit my hip, broke my hip and lodged there. And then I took a graze of my right elbow.
So before we get into what happened next, when you learned about this individual, what was his history that contributed to him having such a violent response to the arrest?
I don't know. Nothing. He had 1 prior arrest before this for trespass, but it was like him and some friends went into a neighborhood under construction, and once the power was, they like went into a house and threw a keg party. Like he was not like, maybe his lack of criminal knowledge, and he had a gun on him. Like maybe he thought it was going to be like he was going to prison, but like, street thugs know just to throw the gun down and be like, I don't know about that. And then, but so maybe his lack of the criminal justice system. I mean, I don't know. And I don't care. You know what I mean? He made a decision and we got it on.
Yeah. So talk to me about the next few hours initially. I had one of my friends, Drew Stokes, on a while ago. He was another guy shot in a Publix parking lot. He's a Coast Guard. He literally died on the operating table. So kind of what was the trauma when they got you into the hospital?
I mean, I never lost consciousness. I never did it. Like I was ready to go to surgery, if that makes sense. Cause like the pain was still there, and it would kind of not really come in waves, but it wasn't a sharp and it wasn't a crazy pain, but like it would just come and like, man, I am tired of hurting right now. I would like to go to sleep and wake up fixed. Like that's kind of how I was in I saw my family. I talked to them. I figured I was going to be all right if I made it into the operating table. Like they weren't rushing. Like I didn't have any major artery hits. I didn't have anything crazy that they could see. You know what I mean? As they wheeled me around and did tests. So, I didn't feel like I was going to die. Now, when I went into surgery, I got a really, really high fever, and they were worried I was going to die because they couldn't bring my fever. They didn't know what was going on with me, but I had no idea that happened because I was under anesthesia. So my family had to worry about that, not me.
What was the background for the fever? That's unusual for trauma.
I don't know. I don't know why it kicked in, and I mean that's what was keeping me in the ICU and stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if it was even the head injury that was sending off your thermoregulation or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you enter this shift fully capable, just thinking you're going to do another few hours in the mall. Now you've had this near-death experience. You've had your physicality taken away from you. You're not, able to do the job the next day. So that purpose, that identity has been challenged. What are the next few weeks and months like for you mentally?
Man, I mean, it was just getting back from an injury. Like that's like I never had any. No one around me, my wife, no one ever thought that I was going to not be a policeman anymore. Like this change, it was just literally now it's time to get back to work. So like I've been injured before through sports. It's just getting your mindset and getting back to work, and everything it works around that goal. Like I mean, the pain was was there, and it was, but I had my jaw wired shut, which sucked. Like, man, like that was more mental than anything. Like, living on soup broth and just like, protein shakes and just losing a lot of weight, losing energy. I mean, that that sucked bad. Like, but once like my jaw, the surgeries came and it was just now, all right, let's get back to work.
How long was your rehab from injury to being fully fit for duty again?
6 months. But I say that because I'd go back to duty, then I'd have to get another surgery on something. I'd have to get like so. I was out probably just under a year and a half over 6 years, but like different things would come up, and I'd have to get a surgery and things like that. So I mean, it lasted a long time, but I got back to work, you know, 6 months, and I think it's because I was ready to get like I pushed to get back to work, like.
I've had Dave Grossman on a few times now, and obviously he, on Killing on Combat, he talks about all the things that happen in a shooting. When you reflect back, what were these changes physiologically and psychologically that allowed you to keep fighting despite, physical wounds and fear as well?
I mean, man, I don't. I was never afraid. It was I was playing the game. It had a high stakes game, but I wanted to win. Like all I could think about was winning, and like I was, I always put that it kicked in like I was angry, but it wasn't a blind rage. It would be more of like if we were gonna race and you got a head start and no one called you on it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what? So then I had to run harder from behind. All I was doing is fighting from behind. And I've done it before. Just because you start losing doesn't mean you're going to end losing. Just stay in it and do what you're doing and fight. And I don't know if I would have lost, I wouldn't have known it. Like I just would have went out. I would have gone out fighting.
You mentioned taking the job seriously right from the get-go. After you finally get back to work, what, if anything, did you change as far as strength and conditioning, weapons training, what you were wearing, etc.?
Really nothing. The only thing that I would have changed from that incident was like when I grabbed him, I was going to dump him back and we were going to go to the ground together. Because at the time, I played football, I was doing MMA, jiu-jitsu, and I'm comfortable on the ground. That's probably not the best place to be in law enforcement or anybody when you're carrying a gun, like up close. Like I probably should have just ran up and pushed him, and then maybe the gun would have fallen out, or I would at least had some distance if he would have went to the. You know what I mean? Like that. But literally, I got to put him in handcuffs. I got to go hands on. I've been in hundreds of foot pursuits. It's just I was ambushed. You know what I mean? And the only way to get through an ambush is fight through it, and that's what I did.
I just interviewed Mitch Aguiar the other day, and he's got the Adopt a Cop BJJ program.
Yeah.
You're walking the walk when it comes to MMA. Talk to me about the importance of judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, or any other kind of combative art when it comes to law enforcement.
I mean, it's a must because it's just all about body control. Even if someone's not fighting you, like just a handcuffing somebody on the ground or like a high risk handcuffing or just like wrist control when escorting somebody, it matters. You know what I mean? And it protects that person that you're escorting too. Because if I can just escort you properly and you understand that, all right, this guy may know something, he has me controlled, I'm not going to do anything, that's better for you and me. me just grabbing your hand and you taking a swing on me, that's bad for you, bad for me, and bad for like your future. Like, you know what I mean? You're now adding serious charges to it. So, I mean, it's a must. I mean, just, it's not the end all be all, but you better have some good like body control and understanding how it works with people.
A common denominator from a lot of people that have been on here that have had both, excellent strength and conditioning and, martial arts is they seem to report far fewer shootings, far fewer hands-on events than seemingly some of the other people. And I think that projection of just knowing, what and having that physicality seems to be very disarming for the people that would be kind of in the middle. You got the people that are going to comply regardless. You're going to people they're going to fight regardless. But that middle ground, just having that in shape, confident male or female police officer, I would argue saves a lot of lives in uniform and outside just by projecting the fact that you don't want to fuck with that person. Just go quietly.
Yeah, you don't have to argue that. That's human nature. Nobody wants to get their ass whipped. You know what I mean? Like even if they want to fight the police, in their mind, they have a chance of winning. You know what I mean? And they don't. And a lot of people, you do have those people who are going to comply and people who are going to fight no matter what. You know what I mean? That could be a mental health thing. That could be whatever. But people who have a decision, they typically decide not to go that route.
Yeah, well, I think that just, again, supports the fitness standards. It supports, giving, grappling training to our law enforcement officers, because the more prepared you can make them, I think the more disarming it is for that middle group then.
Well, I mean, that and your confidence on there. Like, you're not going to jump to putting hands on people or doing these things because you're confident in what you can do. You know what I mean? And being able to talk to people, I think and I don't like to use the word scared, but less scared you are, and you can talk things into people and just like let them understand how it's going to go. You know what I mean? And they don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, even as you mentioned with the law enforcement side too, if you've got someone who's deconditioned, their go-to might be lethal force straight away. So you might think that lowering standards is better for the department, but how much is that going to cost you? Millions and millions if someone wrongfully shoots someone because they didn't have the ability to go hands-on because they weren't held to a standard at the front door.
Oh, you're exactly right. And then they sit there and they go code black. You know what I mean? They're not screaming like, calm down, bro. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, there's all kind of crazy videos of just people not ready to do the job, and they're probably still doing the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same in our profession. And again, I'm very compassionate. Like, again, underlining there are things in our environment that contribute to some of these issues. But if you are on, operational, and you're on a fire engine or in a police car and you're just not able to do the job right now, then there needs to be an on-ramp process to get you back to where you need to be. And if you're willing to put the work in, there should be, a year and a half to get you back. But I think going back to the unions we were talking about, they defend the people that aren't prepared to put in the work, that don't have the heart to do it. And that's a completely different conversation. That person shouldn't be in uniform.
It's your fault. It's your fault that they should. Why do they need a physical stand? Like, it's everything you try to put. And some people think it's great. And then some people, they fight their ass off because they just want to be lazy and they want to carry out their job and, and do whatever because they don't want to lose their job. And I get that, but it's not about them anymore. It's about us and the people, the community and everything. If you're unable to do your job, then go find a different job.
Yeah. Well, this is what's interesting when you talk to, the special operations community, when you talk to high-level coaches that work with athletes or people that were athletes themselves. The amount of support that they get, strength and conditioning, nutrition, sports psychology, physical therapy, all the things to perform at a high level, either in war or in sports, is incredible. And then you look at fire, police, EMS, even when we have some of those people come to our agencies, a lot of times it's just, well, we're going to try and get you to die a little bit less than you do at the moment, rather than forging performance. So I think that there's, now that in this fireside that we're starting to see this shift in this work week, this is what I'm hoping will be the next step, is that we have not only fitness standards, but we have these professionals coming in and working with our men and women in uniform to work on their psychology. God forbid they get in a shooting, to be, work towards a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or whatever the thing is, so that we can actually look at the performance side rather than just be constantly on the back foot talking about the cancers and the heart attacks and the suicides.
I mean, I think that's great and it's all well intended, but it will not be well attended. You will have a guy sitting in an empty gym or the same 10 people will come nonstop because they love it. Because this is great. I got my own personal trainer. Like, I would eat that up. But people aren't there because to me, it's not because of the lack of availability of it. They're there because of the lack of dedication to themselves and the discipline. They don't do it. They are comfortable in their job. They've done it long enough that they understand, all right, I've gotten out of shape and I'm still able to do my job. They don't look at it like I can't do my job as well as I could have done it before. And I think it's all well and good, but I think it's going to be a waste of money because the people who are going to be there are going to work out anyway. They're going to go to jiu-jitsu anyway. You're helping them out great because you're giving them a free one. But it's just until we change the culture and get back to it. And, we used to have like shooting contests, like a Top Gun law enforcement, right? Now we do golf tournaments and softball games. We do different things. Then we need to bring it. We're not going to be able to bring it back. Like, I think it's just too far gone, but there are going to be people there that can do the job, and just let them work, let them do it, and don't ostracize them because they are going to be the minority.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, is if we can turn this recruitment crisis around by fixing some of these things. And now you're taking the top percentage of, whatever list, that group of meat eaters or alphas, or I hate that word alpha, but the people that are fired up and driven by the job, will start expanding, and that will kind of push the walls wider and wider and wider. And then that performance side will be a much bigger conversation. But to underline your point, Tim Kennedy, I know he's had some stuff around him recently, but he did Sheepdog Response here in Ocala a few years ago, right after Parkland. And someone sponsored a bunch of spots, and they did a whole load for the law enforcement, because they have the two. They have civilian law enforcement, and then all us firefighters did the civilian one. Civilian one was fully sold out. And then the second day, I think we were all still there. The law enforcement, they didn't even fill all the spots. And then day two, they had a bunch of no-shows. And Tim was telling me about this. And this is the problem, is, again, well-intended, completely free 2-day seminar teaching on the law enforcement side, literally what you do as a job, weapons and hands-on tactics, combatives. And they, in Marion and Ocala combined, they couldn't even fill a room with police officers and get them to come back the next day. And the kudos to the ones that were there. Obviously, they were the ones that got it. But it does illustrate the issue that you're talking about, which is, if you're just going through the motions and you're scared of being exposed, because that's the whole point of training. You deliberately get exposed so you can figure out what needs to be worked on. But if you're scared of even looking in the mirror as a firefighter or a police officer, that's terrifying in itself.
If you make it optional, they're going to opt out. I mean, the culture is going to have to be you go or you lose your job. Even if they go and they don't put out and they don't want to be there and they bitch, it's still better than sitting on the couch and bitching. You know what I mean? But it needs to be a mandatory thing and what you do. You can't make it, and that's where your unions are going to lose their mind or do whatever. If all right, I'm giving everybody on this shift 1 hour of PT, and if you're at work, you'll be at PT. You know what I mean? Oh, I got a court date. I got this. I mean, the excuses are going to come out. Yeah, the guys that are there every day are going to stay there every day. The guys that we're talking about, they're not. They're going to make excuses and they're going to do something. But that's up for management, and I don't think law enforcement is really a good manager. Just because you're a good policeman and you took a test doesn't make you a good sergeant or a good manager or a good leader. And pushing dudes to do these things, and like that's where I never had that culture, because our culture on our SWAT team, I did 17 years on SWAT. I never really left the team. And our culture was we PT together. We work, you know what I mean? We do everything together and we hold each other. So we dropped kind of our PT standards for once you make the team, for just to keep guys longevity, because we were losing guys after like 3 or 4 years because they're just really beat out. But we had a PT standard, and it was up to, and people were, the people were going to do this. I was like, bro, they don't make it to where we're at and then give up on PT. That makes, like, you're going to PT. Like, I told myself, I can't wait till I retire because I'm just going to become a fat ass and not work out and blah, blah. Yeah, that doesn't happen. It's where I'm at now. Like, I feel like shit if I don't work out in a day. You know what I mean? You got to make it mandatory. And then maybe once you make it mandatory and you stick it out for several years, then even new people who come on understand, like, this is the standard. When I come on, you're going to get rid of the people who've been there before the standard because they're going to bitch. You know what I mean? So you got to give it 3 years to phase those people out, or, get on the train or get off the train, but this train's moving.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, when you have a high standard in the academy and then you set a high standard in the orientation of your department and then you maintain it with annual fitness standards and realism in training, it's easy to stay in shape. It's when you stop and you have no standards and people come deconditioned, they've genuinely got, 50, 100, 150 pounds to lose. That is daunting. So the solution is to not lower the standard and maintain that. And I think this is what we're seeing now, is a lot of unions. I'm a huge believer in the union philosophy. I paid my dues my whole career. But when I look back, I mean, just at the work week on itself, like the place, the city that our union is out of at the moment is Boston. 42-hour firefighter work week. Zero conversation about, well, hey, maybe the rest of the country should work this beautiful work week that we have. Nothing. Yeah. So if fundamentally even the work week you won't put your neck out for, then, what are we paying you for? And so it's not about getting rid of unions. It's just like questioning who we've got in those positions and are they doing what's right for our people? And that means our own people in uniform, their own health, their own longevity, their relationships, and then our ability to protect the public. And if there's a disconnection between making our men and women as perform at the highest level and make them have the greatest longevity and what they're actually doing, then you have to revisit, is this the right person with the right policies? Because if they don't have the guts to even enforce a fitness standard in a job where lives are at stake, then why the fuck are you even here?
Right. And do you think that, like, look at the chiefs and all this stuff that are high up, do you think they want a physical standard?
But they should.
You know what I mean? Because it doesn't matter. They should, 100%. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not my job. It doesn't matter. Like, you got, it's, the standard is the standard and they need to uphold it, but you're not going to get it, man. It's just not going to happen because the majority of people are lazy. You have great intentions and that's going to happen, but it's beating your head against a brick wall if you think, like, lazy's going to be lazy. You can see it change in some small departments. Like, you can see some small departments or small units and you're like, man, these are the example. And you get a large thing where they've had a bad culture. They're not going to put in there because you're going to have too many bad apples to even make that orchard worthwhile.
All right. Well, you come back from this near-death incident. You rehab mentally, you rehab physically. Before you transition, now obviously we're still in SWAT, should I say? Were there any other officer involved shootings that you were a part of, and then how again did that factor in compared to the almost dying in one prior to that?
Yeah, man. So I got involved in where I was a shooter. I was involved in two more shootings. But I mean, we got shot at a bunch, and a lot of like I've probably been involved in 15 shootings where people are like shooting out windows at us and doing it's like maybe not directly at me or I'm not shooting, but like a lot of high stress shooting things where I'm writing reports on the shooting, but not, I wasn't being a shooter. And, you know, yeah, I mean, I've been involved in a bunch of different ones, and each one affected me a little bit differently. Like, so the one we had a guy, he killed his brother, his brother's friend, tried to kill his mom and dad. They are only alive due to modern medicine, shot them all with a 12 gauge, kind of disappeared into the woods, robbed the store, did some things. So we had him in, we did like it was a 4-day manhunt in these woods for him, a woodland search. We kind of gave up the woodland search, but we kept like a QRF of SWAT guys in that area, like around the clock, and we would respond to, if neighbors called, they heard something or did something, and we responded to a farm, and we ended up finding the guy inside of a boat, like that was on land. It was on a trailer, but back with canine kind of tracked to this thing, and we ended up shooting him and killing him in the boat. And man, that was a big relief for me. Like, to me, everyone in law enforcement or everyone carries a gun, or probably even in the firefighter world, like everybody has that dream, like you can't pull the trigger, or the trigger's so hard it won't go, or the gun's not like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it is in the fire, like the water's not coming out. I don't know what it is, but like it's that fear of not being able to answer the bell, and I answered the bell prior to this, but then after being shot, after like I felt like I was okay and I didn't really have any problems, but you never know until you answer the bell again. So answering the bell on that shooting, like, I mean, I was relieved and happy. And I was talking to, he ended up being our undersheriff, but he was, I think, just our team leader or tactical guy at the time, or our lieutenant. And he's, just checking on me, Jared, how you doing? And I was like, man, I needed that. And he's like, Jared, you never need shootings. You know what I mean? And I explained it to him. I was like, I go through the door all the time with these guys, and they have to be able to count on me just like I count on them. And now taking away that question whether or not I can respond, or is the gunfire going to make me, I don't like go into relapse or something crazy. You know what I mean? But it was good, and I needed it because I needed to know that I could do the job and be good for the fellas. You know what I mean? And the community.
Well, I think that goes back to being a rookie, doesn't it? When you first start,
yeah. I mean,
it's
the exact same thing. Like it restarted my shooting clock. Kind of like I was like, I need this to kind of make sure that I'm not gonna freeze.
So what made you finally, pull the trigger and transitioning out? And then how was your transition? Because as we know, many people in uniform, especially if your identity has been wrapped up solely in law enforcement, it can be jarring for some of our people when they retire. So what kind of made you make that decision? And then what was your initial, few months like?
So I retired because Safariland offered me a job. I mean, like literally I retired on a Thursday and went to work on Monday. And it was just starting, and it was not that I was even ready. Like I had a hard time accepting that. It took me a couple of weeks to accept the job because I still love my job. Like I think it was one of the best jobs in the world. I was able to do it. I wasn't like out of shape, but what about in a few years when I'm not able to do the job and now I'm stuck on patrol and now I hate this, or, you know what I mean? Like, so, and I talked to a friend of mine who went to played high school football together. We went to the academy together, and his path went along promotion, and mine stayed right there on SWAT. And he was an assistant chief, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, Jared, how many doors have you kicked in? You know what I mean? I was like, thousands. And he's like, when are you going to be tired of that? And I was like, probably never. You know what I mean? And he's like, so what's the difference in doing it now and 5 years from now? Like it's going to be hard anytime you do it, but you have a great opportunity to change your family's life. Like, you know what I mean? It doubled my salary. You know what I mean? And I looked at it like that and just like, hey man, I got to go. You know what I mean? I got to go do this for my family and do this. And I'm still in law enforcement. Like I still get to hang out with the fellas and show them cool products and do stuff. So, I mean, I've had a great transition. I mean, I love it. I try to tell people like, hey man, you're not stuck there. There is life outside of this, and there are people who want to hire you, and you'll do a great job. The stress that is lifted from our shoulders even when you have a great job, I had a great job, but there's always drama involved in something, like, you know what I mean? And like now, like out in the civilian world, man, I don't have, it's relief. It's the big boy rules you think of and you do, and like you're able to work, you're not micromanaged. You're there because of, they expect you to do a job, and just do your job and you'll do it. I've been promoted at Safariland, and just, I'm trying to crush every day, you know what I mean? And not look back on it as being bad, because there is life after retirement.
See, I agree with you completely. I never rose above firefighter because that's what I dreamed of doing when I was in the academy, not writing, staffing reports or, standing outside the engine with a microphone in my hand. And, but, my career, my life took me to a point where after the podcast was started, I realized that, well, hey, I could be a force multiplier for this profession. I could speak for the people that can't speak because they're still in.
Yeah.
And so it took me out earlier than I ever thought, I would. But to your point, what I've realized, especially is such a powerful lens when you're standing on the outside looking in again, is how many of our men and women are crippled by the thought that the only thing they know is police. The only thing they know is fire. And right. Yes, some people go into security from law enforcement. Some firefighters go and teach at academies. But you work under high stress. You work well with teams. You're a problem solver. There's all these assets that can be applied to so many areas. And, the benefits that used to be the carrot on the stick these days are awful anyway. I mean, the health insurance in most places is just dog shit. So realizing that you can also, as you said, make a good living and be home in your own bed with your family, watch your kids grow up before it's too late. So, if people are still in the profession and they've got, X amount of years to go, fantastic. And if it's their choice and they understand everything that's available to them. But I think there's a lot of people, good people even, that stay way too long because of pensions, drop programs, or whatever it is, without realizing that you can, hang your coat up at 5, 10, 15 years, be proud of your service, and then transition to something else that's also going to make the world a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, even with like pensions and everything, I mean, we have a drop program and it's great. And I think the drop's great. If you don't ever plan on working again, like maybe you did something prior to law enforcement or fire, and like when you are done with this, you're kind of done working, it's great. But man, as soon as you're able to, I think you need to get out, because you're going to make that drop money. But they show a number to you and you're like, oh man, I can't give that up. I was like, you're going to make way more than that if you go get a job. You know what I mean? And don't think of it as a retirement gig. Go get a career and go do your second career and try as hard as you can at that. And you're going to do great. Like it's hard to trust in yourself and believe in yourself and bet on yourself. So it's easy like to get people stuck in that they're won't get out. Like my best friend, man, he just got out last week, and I've been telling him forever, just man, you got like just your personality. Everybody loves you, bro. You know what I mean? Like you can get out and do great. And because there's so many people who people hate, they're just idiots. You know what I mean? And they're and like you are an asset if you just bet on yourself and go put yourself to something and apply yourself and work hard. It's gonna do well.
Well, I think two really misunderstood or understood, if that's even a word, I don't think it is, areas that are so detrimental to us is sleep deprivation and all things physical and mental ill health, and then organizational stress or betrayal. How absolutely crushing that can be. And what I found, the last place I worked at was, rife with that. Is the moment I left, it was like 1,000 pounds came off my shoulders. And it wasn't I didn't want to be a
Yep.
firefighter or a medic anymore. It was that I didn't have to kowtow or bow down to people that really were not qualified to do their job, that were higher up this, invisible ladder that we kind of, are subservient to. And then you realize, I
Yeah.
can just go and get shit done now. I can go and fix things now without it taking 6 months and massaging 12 egos to get a fucking fitness program put in, for example. So
Yeah, man, it's a huge relief. I mean, I don't, everybody I've talked to who's done it, like, and I'm still like, and they're just like, man, this was great. Like, I needed this. Like, I didn't want to retire and then have to go to the courthouse and put a uniform on and do something that I wasn't doing before. Like, go and find, like, but those things, I'm not saying anything bad against those people, but they've never really bet on themselves. They've never really done anything and put themselves out there. Their physicality and shit is probably different too. You know what I mean? They're disciplined. They're willing to take risks. Like, that's a big freaking deal. Like, you start looking at some of these people who are super successful. They didn't get there by not taking risks and not being disciplined to sit in there. And when it's not going as great as you want, to stay in and keep going and keep pushing forward when it hurts. I think that's the secret to success. And I feel like, my law enforcement career was a great law enforcement career, but I'm going to be more successful as a businessman and being able to support my family and doing what I'm doing now.
Well, expanding on that, talk to me about the training that you offer and the spectrum of it.
So Reston Group's been around for 15 years now, and we teach firearms and tactics to law enforcement, military, and civilians, armed civilians. And that's really great. But I've taken that and built. So then I've teamed up with Ridgeline Defense before, and we've been friends for years. I had the opportunity to buy into the company, so I bought into the company. We're now manufacturing rifles. We have 2 training facilities. We have all these things that are happening, and it's great. It's just, take what you have, don't be happy with what you got, and keep building. You know what I mean? Take every opportunity you have to keep building. And, me and my wife bought a chocolate store. Like, we have a Peterbrook chocolatier store. Like, that was one of her dreams, and we made it happen. And we're like, and it's hard. It sucks. The chocolate business is not that great. But we work, and we're going to keep pushing, and it's going to take off if we just keep helping or keep pushing, keep doing what we're doing. And that's where you got to show your family and stuff, not just being a law enforcement officer or, a slave to that paycheck, but just get in there and use those opportunities. Like, I never graduated from college. My college was 20 years of law enforcement. That's how I'm able to even get the jobs and the experiences and the opportunities that I have. And I'm going to take full advantage of that. But it doesn't define who I am. I'm not a policeman, only a policeman. You know what I mean? It's what I did, and I did some really, really cool things, and I love it, and I loved it. But, there's things else to do.
I want to throw some closing questions at you quickly, but this can have, no response whatsoever, or, go wherever you'd like to. But yesterday, obviously, we saw, sadly, because social media is in our face these days, the brutal slaying of Charlie. Was it Kirk? Have I got that right? Yeah, Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
As a paramedic, what I saw was an immediate bleed that there's no way in hell someone's going to survive from. So the fact that they said that he was at the hospital, I figured that was probably what we call a show code by that point. But I'm obviously not a tactical person. but I did see person in custody and then manhunt and then 200 yards shot. So from your perspective, looking at this video, are there any myths that are apparent to you so far? Or, what are some of the takeaways with such a kind of veteran lens that you have when it comes to this kind of environment?
The takeaways are, when doing large venues and things like that, it seems in the past year that assassination is kind of on the uptick, and people are trying to do it. And as a security side of that, we need to understand it, and it's not just day-to-day pep rallies or whatever it is. Like, if you have a certain amount of people there, you need to have a certain amount of security there. Owning the high ground is, we're going to have to take these things seriously. And I don't know, how. I know he had a small detail and he had the college police, but he's going to have to pay for a more security. Like, if you're out there doing these things, you need to take your own personal security high up there. And that's different teams and occupying buildings and doing, a better, upfront evaluation. And there's guys out there that do this stuff like all the time, you know what I mean? And they need to, rather than putting your life into the hands of a college police force.
Yeah.
And it's going to change. I mean, it's got to change. Full security packages are going to have to start going with these people.
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad. But then if you contrast it to Evergreen, I mean, this is a school that's supposed to be safe that someone walked into with a weapon. So, this sadly is the environment that we have in this country at the moment, as we've kind of unpacked the last couple of hours, is, when you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, this is what we get. We get these violent incidents over and over and over again. And, whether it's, again, the combination of the mental health crisis and all these other factors that come into it, it shouldn't be a regular occurrence that politicians are killed, or heads of, healthcare systems, or schools full of children. If there are countries around the world that don't deal with this on a daily, weekly basis.
And I feel like a lot of it is definitely mental illness and just self-aware. I think of the family structure, like, of understanding. Like, I used to hate, like, I'd go, a couple would call the police and say, I need you to go take my dad's guns. And I'm like, you need to take your dad's guns. If you think he's unsafe, I'm a policeman. I can't go, you know what I mean? Like, take care of your family to do this. Well, that's going to break his heart or what. I don't care. It's hard. Like, I remember, like, talking with my mom about taking my stepdad's driver's license when he couldn't, like, he was a detriment. And she's like, well, I can't. I was like, you have to do, like, you man up, you put your big girl panties on, and you take his driver's license. And that was one of the better things that we could do. You have to, that as a family, we come together and make the hard decisions and do things. And when you see a mentally ill person doing mentally ill stuff, call them out on it. Like, with some of these recent killings of, like, at the Christian school, like, magazines painted with all kind of racist, crazy stuff on it and painting on the guns. And that is crazy talk. Understand it, but nobody wants to call a spade anymore. And they want to look the other way because it's easier on them. They need to come up, get them mental health problem, like, get it. And then we really need to watch what these people say on, like, social media and what their rhetoric is, because it's easy to convince a crazy person to do something. If I give them a cause and they think that they're going to be the great savior, they'll do crazy stuff. You know what I mean? So watch our rhetoric, and watch, if you don't mean it for it to happen, you need to watch what you say, because crazy people will take that as a calling.
I couldn't agree more. And it's bizarre. I had my Instagram shut down about 8 months ago now, and all I usually post are clips from interviews like this. And then usually, kindness and compassion, whether it's our communities, whether it's other people. And it got shut down. Now I've had, doctors that were in Gaza that came back and talked about what they saw. I've got a funny feeling that might be the reason. They claim copyright, but that's absolute bullshit. But then so much of this nastiness and hate is encouraged on social media because that gets clicks. Yes. So I think, this algorithm that really, whether it's deliberate or just based purely on popularity, that allows this hate and this divisiveness to perpetuate, they absolutely are part of the reason for this. They have blood in their hands too.
Yeah. We're all Americans. And if we were not at a rally or not looking at social media, we were at a bar hanging out, we would all get along.
100%.
It's not as bad as people try to say it is. And it's not. And like with racism in our country and stuff, I was like, look, there are still racist dudes. Yeah, if you pull up to a 75-year-old man, a white guy in the South, and yeah, he's probably racist. You're never going to change him. But you know what? His son and daughter is probably not. Like, it's got to fade away. Like, you got to let these people die. And the racism is going to die with that culture. Like, I don't know. I've always played sports. No, it doesn't matter who you are. I'll call you my brother. We go to battle together, on a team, on whatever we do. You don't see racism in special operations. You don't see racism in football, basketball, whatever. You see a team, any kind of really teams, and then it blows my mind, like NFL, like end racism and all that shit. I was like, y'all have ended racism. Y'all need to sit there and be like, model yourself after us, because we call each other brothers and we make fun of each other and do things, and we make fun of the cultures that we come from, but we stand by each other and we love each other. Like, I got several people that I'd call my brother. You know what I mean? That's the type of shit that people take these little tiny things. Like, that's what I think's wrong with the internet. I mean, what's good about the internet, it gives everybody a voice. What's wrong with the internet, it gives everybody a voice. You know what I mean? And they don't need it. And man, and they take those little minority things that just don't even affect anything. It's a blip, but they're going to make it something, and it's wrong.
I had a guy on the show recently, Alan Shabaro, who's a Green Beret, and we were talking, and he was saying about racism in America, and I said, well, the way I look at it is, let's say 10% on each side are the extreme. In a country with 340 million people, that's 34 million lunatics on each side that believe that Fox or CNN is the gospel. And then you have the 80% in the middle. It might lean a little bit, but I would call them arguably normal people that can be pulled and swayed. And then you have the steadfast ones right in the middle. But yes, you have all these voices that talk about racism or, whatever the thing is. But if you think about the 260 plus million people in the middle, that's the voice that we need to hear, but they don't get the microphone.
Yes.
They listen to the fucking wingnuts on either side rather than the majority in the middle.
So, I would say it's 5% on either side.
I mean, most likely, yeah, I would agree with you. It's
when you're given 10%, like, that's a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the majority aren't getting the voice, and we're acting, and we put so much attention towards these others on both sides. It's wild to me. Like, because most people don't care. Just leave them alone, and you know what I mean? And just go about and just be good human beings.
Exactly. I always say, tongue in cheek, if only there was a holy book that was written about being a good person.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Well, the first of the closing questions, is there a book or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
I don't think any book that you need to read. Like, I've read like the On Killing and all, like, the Grossman books. They're super hard to read, but they're great for doing things. But I mean, I don't think you need it. I'm trying to think of the basketball coach wrote a book, and it has nothing. It has to do with like training and purpose, like purposeful training, which I think is really good. But I mean, that's more sports stuff. I don't think there's one, but just read and look at the things out there and find things that maybe aren't in your specific job title, but and just read some. There's a lot of great information out there, and you can relate it to your stuff.
What about films and documentaries?
I mean, nothing life changing. You know what I mean? I don't know. I watch movies, I watch documentaries, but like I don't think if you don't watch it, you're different. Like, you know what I mean? I would say 80s movies because these kids today haven't seen like really cool movies like the original Red Dawn and like, cool action movies like RoboCop and Predator and things like that. But that's just cool, fun movies.
Absolutely. All right. Well, the next question, is there a person that you recommend to come on this podcast as a guest to speak to the first responders, military, and associated professions of the world?
Alex Hartman.
Tell me about him.
So Alex is the CEO of Ridgeline Defense, and he is a Marine um, sniper that really is just taking the bull by the horns, and it's just a really smart guy and has taken his military career and pushed it way past anything ever would have expected out of him.
When he's designing weapons, this is always intriguing. Obviously, they're, the kind of nuts and bolts of a lot of these weapon systems have already been, innovated years and years prior. What are some of the areas that Ridgeline is changing to try and, create this next generation?
So the great thing that we saw, like with us, is through our experiences and training people, you can see that the overarching problems that are like most AR-15s have, right? So we just set out and tried to fix these problems. And with that, we didn't really come out with anything great. We took everything great that we like on a broad span of weapons and put them all into one package. And it's just like right now with our LPRs, we have the most accurate AR-15 light precision rifle on the market, hands down. Like it's crushing the competition world. Law enforcement agencies are using them all over now for for Overwatch and things like that because it is a great weapon system. We've now pushed that over into like the blaster side of things, like the chrome line barrels and doing it by taking different rails and our rails and doing different things. And man, we make a quality working man's firearm. Everybody who works at Ridgeline, we've all carried a gun through a door with bad people with guns on the other side of that door. Like, so we're guys making guns for guys. And we know how important it is. Everybody who works there knows how important it is that screws tight to the right tight because it might matter.
Do you have a version of the MP5, that kind of weapon?
No.
Okay.
Not yet. We just started with the precision rifle and the AR-15. Then we'll move to the bigger bore guns.
Okay, because that's one thing I've listening to people from all walks of life talking about home defense. One of the ones that made sense to me that'll be the next one I buy probably was some sort of 9mm, pseudo rifle. I don't even know what the correct term would be, but hearing, people saying, well, if you've got too powerful of a weapon in a home defense situation that you might kill the bad guy and then 3 neighbors down the street as well. So that seemed like
that's where you don't want a subgun then, because your 9mm bullet's going to go through way more walls than a 5.56 will.
Well, educate me then, because this is the thing. I'm a noob, as they say.
Yeah, just because it's fast doesn't mean fast and small means it breaks up early, so it doesn't overpenetrate. So it does work on a body, but I would not recommend it. I recommend 5.56 for home defense for that reason, and that's why several SWAT teams carry 5.56 guns. Because they're not over penetrating.
Brilliant. And that would be the frangible round for that?
No, you can use anything. You can use 62 grain bonded. It's because it's going so fast, it breaks up quicker. So like if you wanted like a home defense, like we use sub guns and like 9 millimeters on like car glass and things like that because it will punch through the glass better. It does punch through barricades better. So, I mean, I would go with 5.56 for a home defense.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right, well then,
Hey, no problem.
The last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you and all the companies we've discussed today. What do you do to decompress?
I mean, I don't. I don't have any hobbies. I shoot guns. You know what I mean? I do my work stuff. I don't do anything because that's fun to me. Like, I don't know, like that's decompressing for me. I like to go watch my son play football. Like that's my, or all my boys go play. You know what I mean? But I mean, bro, I don't. I go hard I try to stay hard till I can't.
All right, for people listening, where can they find Ridgeland, the Reston Training Group, and some of the other places you've mentioned today?
So, RestonGroupTraining.com is online or on any of the social medias. RidgelineDefense.com is online or any of the Ridgeline Defense social medias. Gas Gun Fast Gun on Instagram is one of ours for the LPR. And then for Safariland, Safariland.com. And that we manufacture everything that you need for law enforcement and military. So,
and what about
except for guns?
What about social media for yourself specifically?
Reston Group, just under Reston Group. For on Instagram, it's Reston_group, and you got to type that in exactly because I'm shadow banned. So,
yeah, well, my old one doesn't work either, so I'm 2.0 now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jared, I want to thank you so much. It's been such an amazing conversation. Obviously, your line of duty, injury, wounding, was a very powerful chapter of your life, but getting your perspective on so many things that we've discussed today has been invaluable. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thank you for having me, guys.